Attendees. Okay. I suppose we'll go ahead and get started. Let me make sure, and I have my phone in case anyone's texting that they're missing it. Okay. We'll call this meeting of the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority to order. It's Monday, September 28th, 2002 at 6:05 p.m. And this is a virtual meeting. And I have a little statement to read about why we can have a virtual meeting. This meeting is being held electronically pursuant to Virginia law because the COVID-19 pandemic makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum physically in a single location. The code is Executive Order EO 53, restricting public gatherings of greater than 10 persons. I don't know if that's current number, but still. Accordingly, Code 2.23708.2A3 permits public bodies to meet electronically to discuss business required or necessary to operation of the public body and discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities in times of emergencies and to address COVID-19. Therefore, this meeting is held electronically pursuant to Virginia law because the COVID-19 pandemic makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum physically in a single location. And Leslie, could you do a roll call of commissioners? Leslie?
I'll take it. I think she's having some audio issues.
Okay, I can do it. Okay.
Commissioner Rucker? Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Mayor Walker? She can't hear either. She can hear, but she's present, so we'll keep that one. Commissioner Goblat?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can now.
I can't hear. I can't hear y'all.
We can hear you now.
Commissioner Goblat?
Here.
Commissioner Dr. Henry?
Here.
Commissioner Osteen? Here. Commissioner Slaughter? We do have a quorum.
Okay. Oh wait, she's gone. Maybe they're trying to come back in. They turned it off and trying to come back in. Okay, well, let's go ahead with the moment of silence and hopefully they can get back in and hear us. So let's take a moment of silence before we begin. Okay. Ms. Walker, can you hear us? No.
Mayor Walker, this is Joe Rice. Obviously, you can't hear me, so this is not going to do any good. Maybe I can send her a chat giving her instruction as to what to do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Let's see if that shows up. I'll tell her he's going to write. Let's see, maybe we can, why don't we skip ahead and, oh, actually we don't, because we have public comments first. I was gonna say we could read over the minutes and approve the minutes while we're trying to figure out the audio issue. So let's just do that. Everyone, if you need time to look over the minutes, let's take 2 minutes, look over the minutes, and then we can approve those while we try to figure out what the issue is. Let me write in the chat if there's any progress. Whoops.
So Chair Rucker, it looks like we lost Mayor Walker again. I did let her know that to check her audio options by clicking the caret next to the mic to see if a correct speaker setting was on. But I also told her to call me.
Okay.
Her phone.
Okay. I think we could go ahead, and we have enough people. Let's go ahead. And do you think it's okay to go ahead and approve the minutes? Or should we wait for her? I feel like it's something we can do. Let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look over them? Okay. Could I get a motion for approving the minutes?
I would move approval of the August 24th meeting minutes.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor, we need to do a roll call. Mr. Osteen?
Yes.
Dr. Henry? Dr. Henry,
Here.
thank you. Ms. Goldblatt?
Yes.
And myself, and okay. I think we're good. All right, so the minutes passed. And then I'm going to go back and just any general announcements from anyone at CRHA that the public should hear. And then we'll list the next meeting dates.
Yes, I do have one announcement. So one of the items identified in our CAPS for HUD to address our corrective action plan was to draft a new admin plan for the HCV program. So that plan has been drafted and is posted on our website for public comment for 30 days. We do plan to put it in front of the Board of Commissioners at the next meeting. And I did send a copy to the RAB, which included FAR legal aid. So they do have it as well.
Great, thank you. And so all of us can look at it on the website and before the meeting to prepare, right?
I'll send a copy around. I just
Okay.
want to put out public first because it might be one of those items that become a discussion point. So.
All right, thank you. And next meetings, they're on our agenda, but just in case anyone's not looking at that, there are safety meetings every other Tuesday. Tomorrow there's one, October 13th, October 27th. There are 6 p.m. for all the dates, and the Zoom link is the same. And I would say Ms. Goldblatt is probably the person to contact to get the link if you don't have it.
Yeah, that's right. There's a passcode that's included in all the login. I'm working on trying to get rid of the passcode, but it seems like it's an automatic Zoom setting. I don't know if I can override it, but make sure when you click on the link, you will need the passcode to enter.
Okay, great. The redevelopment meetings continue on Thursday at 2:30, and Mr. Norris, who may not be with us tonight, but he typically emails out the Zoom link, so most of us have it, so please ask if you don't have it. The board will meet again on October 26th, and I tentatively was hopeful for a work session if we do this sort of in between the monthly board meetings, have a Thursday work session, and that time seemed to work. So I'm not sure what we need to talk about yet, but let's hold that time as a work session if we need something to talk through. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay. So does anyone from the public have any comments they'd like to share? And I think Mr. Rice, if you put your hand up.
Yeah, so I just want to welcome our attendees to the CRHA regular meeting for September 28th. If you would like to address CRHA, please click the raise hand icon. If you're joining us by phone, just press *9. And Chair Rucker, we currently have one person with their hand up, Mr. Brandon Collins.
Okay, great.
Mr. Collins, you're on with CRHA.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I am Brandon Collins. I work for FAR, Public Housing Association of Residents. We're the recognized resident council and resident advisory board for public housing here in Charlottesville. You can call us at 434-984-3255. I don't have a whole lot to bring up, but start off on a positive note. We are still feeling really comfortable with Mr. Sales and the amount of communication and collaboration we've been able to have with Housing Authority since the last month and a half or so. And we feel pretty positive that progress is being made in a number of things, particularly the approach to dealing with vacancies and just a lot of stuff. We know you have a lot on your plate, but we do appreciate the collaboration. So I'm sure we're all committed to keeping that up. I did want to just mention the past weekend was pretty rough on public housing neighborhoods. Large crowds of people and lots of problems. Maybe not necessarily something new, but I think a lot of folks out here are feeling a lot of frustration. Certainly FAR is, and residents certainly are as well. I know that the safety committee has probably done more work than previous attempts at addressing these problems, but we're still, it really feels like, we're not sure what needs to happen. So for what it's worth, there is a safety committee meeting tomorrow night. We're going to continue to encourage residents to participate and encourage that committee to work towards action and implementing things that can make a difference. And maybe this board has some ideas as well. So just wanted to bring that up. I did have a question somewhat related. Just to clarify, I see that CRHA's SUDs, you had 3 of them, and that none of those are for rent-related issues, which is good. I did want to clarify, so those folks who are deep in on rent, how much access they have to repayment agreements, and not getting so far behind that when things get a little better that folks aren't super stuck. Been meaning to just clarify that at some point. So, and I think otherwise we'll reserve other comments for later, but just wanted to bring those up and hope you all have a super productive meeting.
Chair Rocker, can I address that question, Ms. Collins?
Yeah, please.
So as you stated, none of the SUDs are for non-payment of rent. We actually are working with everyone to sign repayment agreements. And we've also tapped in with 3 different rental relief funds. The state rent relief fund, which became available for subsidized housing tenants probably about 2 weeks ago. So we've been trying to work through that. We've also working with Gretchen Ellis with the Pathways Fund through United Way, which is a city fund. And we're also working with Holly Lee, which is another city fund for rental relief. We're reaching out to them and sending every client who owes back rent to them. We're submitting the applications ourselves just to make sure that everyone's caught up and we're not putting anyone in a bad situation once we get on the other end of this pandemic.
Okay, and we have another attendee with their hand up, Mr. Don Gathers. Mr. Gathers, you're on with CRHA. You have 3 minutes. Mr. Gathers, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
just wanted to piggyback what Mr. Collins just said. I'm sorry, this is Don Gathers, Public Housing Association of Residents for. I look forward to working with Mr. Sales. From what I've seen, he has some very innovative ideas and has literally hit the ground with both feet running. It's an exciting time, and I'm anxious and eager about the future of what we might have in front of us as far as CRHA and FAR. I share the concern of the incidents that are going on in our sites. And as Mr. Collins said, there was another incident this weekend. But again, I will reiterate my my offer to help and assist in any way that I can with that. Don't know exactly what that might look like, but we certainly need to coalesce as much as possible and try to figure out collaborative ways to make sure everyone stays safe in our communities. So whatever I can do, whatever can be done, let's put our heads together and our feet on the ground and get busy doing it. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Looks like we have Joy Johnson with her hand up.
Yes, and Ms. Johnson, go ahead and unmute. You're on with CRHA.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sound like Verizon. Good evening. My name is Joy Johnson, and I wear several hats, but I think tonight I'm going to be wearing the resident hat because I've had a very stressful day today because of residents who are pleading for help, asking for help, and I'm just don't know what to say. I'm a little dumbfounded. I'm a little frustrated. I feel like all the work that we have put into resident involvement maybe going, is looking like it's not effective anymore because we don't seem to be effecting any change. It wasn't just one site that was calling out because all of our site was effective. There was a shooting on West Haven. Someone was talking to me about that and what are we gonna do? And I don't know. I just feel like, we pay more taxes than Donald Trump. We probably richer than Donald Trump. But it just seemed like we are on a desert somewhere that is just lost. My heart has been very heavy all day. I have a bad ankle, but I stood on my ankle just listening to people talking to me and pleading. I don't know. Something has to happen. We have people crying out for help. And, earlier I said that maybe we need to have a march on for poor people, because it seemed like public housing is just out there by itself. It seems, I'm just trying to reiterate some of what I hear people saying today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other attendees that would like to address CRHA during this public comment section? If so, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're on the phone, press *9. Appears to be no one else, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone have, I mean, I think we're all very frustrated with the situation, well, in the world, in the country, but also at the public housing sites with, you know, and just the conditions of living there, not feeling safe. I'm not sure what to say at the moment. I have to think about it. Does anyone have thoughts on moving forward? Ms. Walker, were you?
I didn't hear the first comments. So could somebody just tell me what I missed?
Brandon was echoing, and then Mr. Gathers was repeating that this weekend was very tough, lots of problems and frustrations. It sounds like crowds and safety issues.
Okay. I just was making sure I didn't hear anyone, miss anyone before then. I'll say on my end, since I play another role in the city, probably since, you know, probably late spring, we've been having some pretty intense and I guess uncomfortable conversations about how to handle some of the concerns that are going on in the neighborhoods. When I came to, you know, when I was elected to council, part of what I ran on and part of what I really hold dear, so I don't know the answer to this, is to not police communities the way they've always been policed. And that's a conversation that Chief Brackney and I have consistently had, where I'll make a comment like police Park Street the same way you police First Street. That was brought to my attention in the spring that was problematic and that some people in the community felt abandoned. Some people felt like, you know, I was okay with their children being harmed. And there was a lot of back and forth about that, which none of that, if anyone knows me, is true. But what I do know is that the way that those communities were policed and even managed by CRHA in the 80s and 90s did not work for families. They also don't work for people who have some challenges, who may not be doing everything that we would like for them to do. But we haven't figured out as a community how to help people heal. So that's what I've been trying to ask the question. I feel like some of the conversations I've been a part of, there hasn't been any grace involved in those conversations. It has been, these are people who are problematic and they just need to go. And how by any means kind of necessary. And that's just not a philosophy that I agree with. And I am just one person. I want people to be safe. You know, the weekend after the shootings, I guess in August, when we got the call about them, Chief Brackney and I talked, I think it was a Saturday or Sunday, and you know, the officers' presence were increased for that weekend. And they were increased a little bit longer after we had a follow-up discussion the next day. What happened shortly after that, and Chief Brackney, of course, knows more information than I, because I don't do day-to-day with the officers, but I think some officers who may have been doing what they thought they were being asked to do, we started getting some feedback downtown about the fact that we were being abusive to the community by doing the very thing that was asked. And Chief Brackney made some decisions about the fact that CPD should not be involved with embarment. So we should not be the people who are saying that, you know, individuals who are barred from the property, these, why we recommend it. So she made that call, which is not a call I don't disagree with. So I didn't discourage her in any way.
Give me that. Okay.
Joy.
But there,
I'm
so
sorry.
it's, so there.
I'm sorry. I don't know why my name is coming up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I just thought, can you mute You're not muted.
Okay.
That's all.
So
I'm
what
sorry.
I was hoping that would happen at some point, what I think people are more frustrated with the fact that I guess things are not happening the way they have traditionally happened, that we haven't come to a like, okay, what is this short-term solution? And that may mean increased police protection, you know, presence, whatever, response. And what is the longer term solution? Because we know that that doesn't work. So I sat in a meeting with our, you know, some of the officers, the leaders, and I asked them the same questions. How is this going to be different from the policing that I grew up seeing in the 80s and 90s, right? And if someone can answer those type of questions for me, and that we're just not writing people off because they may not do or act like we think they should, but at the same time that we're also creating a cultural shift in the community to where people understand that there are some things because the community won't allow it that won't be allowed. That's the only way we're going to truly change things. If not, we'll just be locking people up and evicting them.
First of all, you have to call it what it is. You know what's going on down there, right? All of the nightclubs and everything are closed. And so basically what we have are open air nightclubs.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that would be going on in the nightclub is now going on the streets. So if you can shut down these, because they're nothing but COVID hazards, so you could just use the COVID laws to shut down a lot of this because there's too many people in specific areas. And that's why they're doing it. They don't have anywhere else to go. That's not that hard to understand.
No, it's not that hard to understand. I don't think anybody's having a challenge with understanding this, but it's what is the response? So if you send officers to these sites, they are more likely than not going to discover something. There's going to be something that there's a law against that someone will be violating. Whether we agree with those laws or not, the officer's job would then to be follow the law. So then when we get our report the next month and say from these neighborhoods, X number of people were arrested, then we have to deal with that also, when that's not ultimately with anyone at City Hall or a lot of us at City Hall wants to happen. And so it's how to get these messages out or give these direction, you know, to the, you know, communities in a healthier way. And I understand that there isn't anywhere to go now because of COVID, but when we talk about long-term strategies anyway, a lot of our problems stem from the fact that a lot of our adults and youth don't have activities in other spaces anyway.
That's right.
That's an issue that we have in the city that's a big part of the larger problem that we haven't fixed. And so even trying to get to a resolve, like, you know, trying to come up with those solutions, I don't know what that answer is, because I feel like I'm not a part of every conversation and people
right.
be intentionally out of some conversations. And that's both ends. That's people from the community, that's people on staff, you know, I am left out of things. And all I can say is I'm one person. I am going to say how I'm feeling. And I don't feel like that we should be sending the police in to just sit when kids walk out of their homes, that it's a police at their front door. You know, it's like Hoover's, an agent at every mailbox. I do not agree with that type of practice. But it's also the conversations we had around the time that the shootings were happening on First Street. No kid should have to live with someone shooting, having to drop down on the floor of their house with potential bullets, you know, coming through their walls, windows, you know, can't stand outside of their front stoop. That shouldn't happen either. But I don't feel like we are coming up with solutions to say, we know why these type of behaviors exist. Do we hold the systems that created these behaviors, or do we hold people who haven't been able to grow out of these behaviors accountable for doing exactly what they were created to do? And if we don't create a better sense of community, then we are just going to have systems, the systems that we know work, I guess, temporarily, where police are coming in, or things are going to, individuals are going to be faced with eviction. So that's just what I've been dealing with for the past few months, with trying to have these conversations with, CRHA from Kathleen, and then John, and then trying to have the conversations downtown about what the response, should be.
Thank you for all that. I know that, at least I feel, it's harder to have some of these meetings over on the computer, when really what you want is people to be able to come together and talk in each neighborhood, because not every neighborhood wants the same thing. There's differences across all our sites. So I think it's probably even more difficult in a way to have, what am I trying to, consensus about, which way to move.
And even when you get the variations from within the neighborhood, right? There's different stories. But I think what I heard from Joy, and what I've heard from her for, a couple months now, and I understand that she's frustrated, is that, the bottom line is, how do we create this change in culture? Because that's the only way you build healthy neighborhoods anyway. But how do you keep people safe while you're working on this larger systemic, change? And that's what I have been hoping that we come to the table and talk about. But what usually gets back to me, why we're the police.
Well, and usually there's been an incident that, it's so much more urgent that people, want to address that right away, rather than the short and long term.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Yeah. Mr. Sales, are you connected?
Can I say something? I think one of the things that concern me and frustrates me is that staff wants to be in the neighborhoods. They want to walk the neighborhoods at night. But fear from, we would run into something and call the police, and no police will come out, keeps us from doing that.
But Ms. Green, that is unfair, because when have the police been called and not shown up? So sitting in the neighborhood and responding to violence within the neighborhood are two different things. And that is one of the things that we've been criticized for, which, unless I'm missing an incident, the police have been on the scene.
No, I've heard it from residents that they have called Haven, the police has not shown.
I will say our security firm has also had the same complaints. Millennium said they've called numerous times to CPD, and they've received, we are busy, we can't get to you, we're not authorized to do that. So there's a larger dialogue that we must have about the situation and how we look at it holistically, and not just an emergency response, which is what we have been doing. We need to be proactive because the issue isn't going to go away. So
we had 8 cars on the scene last, was it 2 days ago? Yesterday, whenever it was. But there was incidents going on in 3 different places on Madison Avenue, as small as Madison Avenue is. And folks were, how would I say it? Confronting the police officers. And I've had occasions where police officers have talked to me and said they are reluctant to do anything because they don't want to conflict with whatever the public housing policy is, you know, in terms of certain things that go on. So they're at a point where they don't know whether to act or not and how that will react with regard to the community. So, you know, I guess I can see half of what you're saying and half of what Nakaya is saying in terms of where we're at with, you know, some folks who want to see police do less and some want to see them do more. And yet everybody wants to feel safe.
Well, I think what conversation I've attempted to have is with the police chief to talk about how we can work around this and get to an MOU, because that's a conversation that we've all had, was getting a clear MOU with the police department. I wish I could get some communication, a lot of communication to her, but that has not worked. I've reached out several times since I've taken over on August the 3rd. I've had no luck. I've reached out to several city folks to also get in contact with her, and I've had no luck that way as well. So we're attempting to have that conversation, but it has to be a conversation that they want to have. And we are open and ready whenever they are.
I know in meeting, and just to add to that, hopefully if we can get to the point of having an understanding where there's no police standing there asking questions, but there's a kind of directive of what I mean, obviously in an emergency, we need whatever help we need. But for these, you know, more minor incidents, how we, you know, how they should be behaving. One of the things I had been thinking about is when we had some safety meetings earlier in person before COVID, probably last year, it kept coming up that and this is the police department's, you know, kind of their purview, but whenever there's been more community-based policing, where a couple of police would, you know, tend to be the people seen on certain sites and get to know all of the community, not the people that we're trying to keep out or what, you know, not just identify people having maybe a negative effect in terms of safety, but getting to know the kids, walking around the site, knowing people that it seemed like the police we were talking to, that was seemed like a more positive approach. And for whatever reason, they haven't been working that way. And I'm sure there's a lot of ideas of how we can go on, but it did keep coming up that there are models that might work better. And that's you know, that's within the police department, but maybe it's time, you know, in these safety meetings, but also with Chief Brackney to try to think of some short-term solutions, because the systems take a long time, as we know, to shift, you know, some kind of bigger issues. But I'm thinking, you know, between Millennium and maybe some community police, you know, some sort of more non-emergency police presence in a way, you know, I don't know. Anyone else have thoughts on this? Besides, we need to just get in the, so to speak, in the room together. Definitely with foreign residents, though. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know the safety committee updates are towards the end of the agenda, but I can jump in. I don't know if now seems like
yeah. Do you want to go ahead and just give that report?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of what Ms. Choi said, we've been hearing in the safety committee meetings. We've worked hard to move towards becoming a policy committee, in addition to being a place where we hear residents' concerns. And I think that's largely because of residents feeling that they come to a lot of meetings and then nothing gets done. And so we've tried to push towards concrete outcomes so that when people come to meetings, they feel like they're contributing to something. But I think it's really concerning and disheartening to hear these stories. And so I don't know if anyone who's watching or listening, what we really need is we just need more participation from residents. We need to hear more voices. And I think that I have a lot of strong opinions about policing, but one thing that I feel very strongly is that safe communities are about strong communities. And so it's a really difficult moment right now to imagine building strong communities because we can't be in person together and we can't do a lot of the things together that make for strong communities. But that's why we need more resident voices. I just would love creative ideas. We've been hearing really amazing creative voices. Some of the FAR interns, Miss Katrina Cooper has had really, really great ideas about resident-led community initiatives on the different sites. And I'd love to hear, I'm not just me, we'd all love to hear more of that. And so if there's people listening, in terms of safety at the last meeting, we talked about the parking policy since a lot of residents felt that parking was becoming an issue that was helping to encourage people to linger and that there was a safety issue there. So we talked about the parking policy that has been, my understanding is it's been sent out. And we're going to be talking about this MOU with the police, and we're going to be talking a lot about cameras. I know cameras, some residents really want them, some don't. We'd love to hear your opinions on cameras. And I've asked some of the staff to begin by telling us a little bit about some of the data on cameras and how effective they are at preventing crime, and what different options there are so that we can make as informed a decision as possible. So the notes from each meeting, I send them to FAR and to the CRHA staff. I don't know if they're published anywhere, but they can be if anyone wants to read. But of course, if you have any questions about the safety committee or you want to join us, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email address in the chat.
And those don't have the residents' names included, right?
No, I take when staff or people on behalf of FAR or like me, anytime someone like that speaks, those names, but otherwise it just says resident.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any last, well, not last, but any more thoughts on this at this moment? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We had been talking about appointing, getting the other committees up and running. The safety committee is pretty well, set. And I just wanted to officially make sure we have a commissioner on each committee. And I had some notes from a couple meetings ago where we had talked about different committees we wanted to be on. So I can make, I'll just name some people who were interested in them. And I think if we have at least one commissioner on each committee, I don't know that they have to run it like Ms. Goldblatt. I mean, I think that's awesome. But there could be a staff member too that helps to schedule and, to keep things going. So between a staff member and a board member, we should be able to get a consistent schedule down and start to kind of keep that and build the agendas. So right now the safety is Ms. Goldblatt, and I think Ms. Slaughter said she wanted to join. Obviously anyone can, well, it has to be publicly noticed, but those two could be the official sort of board members that are, that will be at the meetings and that can then report back to us. Ms. Green isn't on here tonight, but I know, so the redevelopment committee, often there's many of us that have been involved in that. Typically I try to be there, and Mr. Osteen's been there. Ms. Walker's often there, also for her role at the city. So I don't know that we need to add anyone, but I do think we should, maybe we need to have, maybe that's a work session thing, is to make sure all the new commissioners are kind of up to date on what's going on with redevelopment. How have decisions been being made, because they're typically being made in this committee and then brought to the board. So these committee meetings are really where there's most of the discussion. But then also moving ahead, we've sort of been in this, you know, anticipating these new projects starting, and we haven't yet been, you know, we're going to have to shift to the next step and thinking ahead. So anyway, I'm just thinking aloud, but I think it'd be, maybe that's a work session topic just to get everyone up to date who hasn't been able to be in those meetings. Let's see, we had the personnel and staff committee, or I guess personnel related to staff committee, and Ms. Green was interested in working on that. And just tell me if anyone else wants to add their name to these. Resident services, Ms. Henry said she was interested in, and I think I would be interested, you know, I mean, I don't want to take up a spot from a commissioner, but I would try to join some of those. And I think we need to talk to, also to Joy Johnson, who was chairing or co-chairing those for some time, to get some idea about who had been invited to those. And definitely I would like to see adding the school system into that, because right now that's a huge player, since children are being educated, you know, in their homes, hopefully with internet. So just, you know, to add any of the resident services, but also reaching out to important players in the city. Which else do I have? I have finance. I have Ms. Henry, or Dr. Henry was also interested in. And then maintenance was the last one, which Mr. Osteen has been active in. Ms. Slaughter had been for a while. And I don't know if we want to add on, the parallel track hasn't been discussed as much recently. Dr. Henry, the parallel track has been the idea that some of the housing won't be redeveloped soon because we have to move through all of the different sites, which takes time. And so the idea is being a parallel track is that which sites can get improvements that aren't total redevelopment, but what do they need as they wait 10 years? So that's a discussion that, you know, had been going on and kind of keeps stalling, I think, just because the new construction takes so much energy and momentum to keep going, that the parallel track hasn't been discussed quite as much. Anyway, so those are, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 committees. I will write all of this down. I realize it's a little bit odd on the screen without any, without writing it down. But I'll send those to you, and maybe the staff, maybe Mr. Sales, you could, or Ms. Glenn Matthews, you could help figure out which staff could work on which committees, and then between the staff and the board members, start setting a consistent time that we can publish for residents to keep those going. And whether or not, you know, some of them probably don't need to be as often as the safety meeting. That one is more urgent, obviously. Maybe some of them are just once a month, figure out, you know, that how frequently we need to meet. And then who besides, mainly we want to get residents involved, but we also would hope that then we reach out to anyone else in the community that could be helpful or have insight, depending on what the topic is. So commissioners, are there any other committees that you are wanting to join? Or, oh yeah, Osteen just texted that maintenance, yes, for him. I mean, I know we all have a lot going on, but I think we have a pretty good list. We have at least a commissioner on each piece. So I'll write this up, send it to you, and Ms. Glenn Matthews and Mr. Sales, and see if we can match up staff, get our phone numbers and emails, and just say, hey, let's start getting these back in action.
And I would be interested in the finance too.
Oh yeah, that would be great. I think some died out just because redevelopment, maintenance, there's some that are just more they were more active, but then when COVID hit, you know, they really died out. And now we have some new commissioners, so we'll try to revive these, and then because we can't be everywhere, and then each of us can help to report back on these. Okay, so I'll send that out to you all in an email, and don't respond all, just have the email. You can respond to me individually. Okay, I think that we've gotten everything, it sort of jumped around, but Mr. Sales, would you like to, or whomever would like, we have both a update on the budget and our HUD score, hopefully improvement or direction, and then also the executive director update on COVID.
And I'm going to do both of those.
Okay.
That's okay.
Great.
So I'll start with the budget. We were awarded approximately $658,000 in public housing shortfall funding, which we can use to get our public housing up to par and any deficiencies that we see in operations. So such as vehicles, we've talked about restocking for maintenance, so we're not running to lows every day for items. We are potentially looking at leasing or purchasing a structure for the maintenance department, because that structure is going away in phase 1, and we were not able to secure anything with the city for maintenance. And we have not had any progress with finding space without taking community space at any of the other sites. So if we stayed at South First Street, we would take the community center, but then we'll have to move again in a year once that is redeveloped, because that's also going away in phase 2, and that'll be the first part of phase 2 that gets impacted. We are, and the financials are included. We are positive everywhere except for the HCV program. And the reason we had an issue there, the government makes a decision on how much funding to send to each housing authority. Oftentimes that amount is not enough, and we have to tap into reserves in order to fulfill the leftover. So HUD will then come and rectify that issue and refund us the funding. So that should happen within the next couple months. So you'll see that change in the report. All the other places we are actually doing really good, really positive, in every property and central office center. The HUD scores, I would say, and I think HUD would also say, that we're making progress towards improving our scores. We won't actually have any scores back until sometime in probably April of next year. But both Ms. Height, who is the HCV manager, and Ms. Green, who is the public housing manager, are making great steps to address both of those programs. We've put out close to 90 vouchers on the street within the last month and a half, I think. We have about 26 that are going to be leased out really soon. So that's a drastic improvement to where we were. In public housing, we're finishing vacant units. The number does not look good, but that's because we're doing a lot of transfers. So we're transferring individuals from one site to another site due to safety issues, maybe for reasonable accommodations, or just because they requested to be transferred. And we are also getting a lot of individuals that are getting housed with the voucher that are, not a lot, but a decent amount that are coming from public housing. So they're leaving a vacant unit. So you're adding more units to your stock. So the number hasn't drastically increased, but it stayed steady. But it's not because we haven't been working. We're turning the units. I think we finished 3 or 4 units last week. We're projected doing another 3 or 4 this week. So that's what I have for the budget and HUD score. Are there any questions about that one that I can address? Okay. And for the executive director report, As I stated earlier, the admin plan has been drafted and posted on the website. We don't have a wait list for the HCV program. So in order to open up that wait list, we must get an admin plan that's been approved by the board. So that's why it is going to be on a meeting agenda for next month. Otherwise, it will be an operational issue, so that is exempt. So we're going to be waiting for a public comment from the residents in the community, and we'll look to address those comments before bringing it to the board. If we can't address them, then we will make sure that you all know what those comments are and why we could not change or why we were against the change. We're currently working to adjust schedules for operations. We are testing a 4-10 schedule with the HCV program as of this week. We have worked it out so we always have coverage. And we'll have extended coverage most days, well, every day. So we're testing that. We're also looking for office space. And part of the reason why we're testing it is because we have so many people in that office. We've hired a new HCV manager, so now she's also housed in our office. We're currently trying to work with the city to get office space. And I would say that conversation is progressing fairly well. I had a meeting with interim city manager, John Blair, on Friday. As I mentioned earlier, for the maintenance space, we're looking to purchase potentially or lease. We found one site, and the cost of leasing it for 5 years, if we leased it for additional 1 year, we would have bought the site, paid enough to buy the site. So we're looking to see what funding we can use from HUD to purchase that site, since it will be a public housing maintenance facility, because they will be drastically impacted by the redevelopment. It was not planned in the redevelopment to rebuild the maintenance shop, so we must look for another solution. And I think that's all I have. If there are any questions, I can address those. Oh, one more thing. Oh, and Brandon, it's almost been 2 months. You said a month and a half.
Mr. Osteen is writing to ask about REAC in October, and is there a timeline and value in hiring an inspection firm? I'm just reading it since his internet went out. He's listening.
I should have given that update. I'm sorry. So what would have been a REAC inspection in October has been pushed back to March. We have procured a firm though. So they're not only going to inspect every unit except for Crescent Halls. So it's going to be 271 units expected, but they're also going to train our staff to do the inspections as well.
Oh, that's great. So
that's going to be in January. So we're ahead of the game on that one.
That's great. Oh, and Mr. Osteen says great. Just so you know. In terms of the space for the maintenance shed, I guess this might be something that, I mean, that I can ask you about later, I suppose. I'm just thinking in terms of, you know, if there's any help that the board members can help reach out to anyone, or to, I don't know, you know, to make sure we're getting the best deal, the best space, the best location, you know, before we do it.
If anyone knows of any space that's about 3,000 square foot or a little bit larger industrial space, fairly open, that can fit about 8 vehicles. And let's say at any given time, 10 water heaters, 10 washer, 10 set of every appliance, and maybe enough cabinets for 5 units. Please let us know, because we are looking. We were able to find just 2 that are for sale or lease in the Charlottesville area, and one is 11,000 square feet, so it's way more than we will ever need. And one was about 3,400 square feet, and so that's a lot closer to what we're looking for. And they're both in the same price range when it comes to leasing. One of them previously talked to the guy, and he mentioned that they're also open to selling it. And if we're going to lease it for 5 years, I would much rather purchase it, so then we have something that we own especially if HUD will pay for it.
Yeah. Is it, I'm just thinking location wise, being able to access the sites, to make sure it's not way, you know, it's
yeah. So one of the search requirements we put in was a 5-mile radius from South First Street, because South First Street is pretty central to a majority of our sites. So the one we located is off Avon Extended. So it's about 3 miles from our site.
Okay. Great. I wonder if there's any, and I'll shut up about this. I'm just, and I'm sure you've thought of this, but talking to other affordable housing provider, you know, if there's like, if we had to get the one that was the larger amount of space, you know, if we could even rent out or consolidate some of that equipment, or, you know, I don't know, this is probably a longer term discussion, but if we did have too much space, you know, what could we do with that space, you know, and maybe there's room for collaboration, or maybe something else could be done there, even rental revenue. I don't know.
Well, I will say one firm that comes to mind, maybe Leap. I know Leap at one point was looking for more space because they were going to expand. I don't know where they are with that conversation. This was something we talked about, I want to say, before the pandemic. So a lot has changed since that, but they may be willing. So that might be, that's probably a good idea to reach out to them.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Sales, comments? Mr. Osteen says roller derby. All right, let me find my agenda. We already had the safety committee update. The redevelopment update, I believe it's Ms. Glenn Matthews gonna report. Hi.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, Dave's in Ghana, so I'm gonna fill in. We're getting close to closing, hopefully by the end of October. And one of the biggest challenges we've been looking at is resident engagement during this time. We recently worked with FAR and got out letters to everyone in Crescent Halls, giving an update from Mr. Norris on what was happening. And we also attached a 90-day notice, just letting them know in 90 days and thereafter things would be happening. And as well as FAR helped us draft just some pictures and drawings that were very helpful. I've gotten quite a few calls since that letter went out this past week, and we're hoping as soon as Dave gets back from his trip to also start having some information on the TV in the community room at Crescent Halls to share with residents. And I've been purchasing tape and various things so I can explore creating some space in the relocation office to maybe meet with 1 or 2 people at a time, well spaced out with windows open, because we do have some residents in the building that I think really need to have a one-on-one conversation, because I really want to make sure they understand what's happening. We haven't hired a relocation coordinator yet. We're still working on that process. So I'm sort of the interim with that as well, and a lot going on. We're learning a lot right now just on our feet about different ways to engage with residents. And if any board members who have different ideas, please send them our way. They can also be part of the resident services conversation. We're looking at creative ways, and FAR's had a lot of good ones about how to do hearings for our annual plan. And I think we're just gonna, be looking at just various methods that we can use just to get information out. Some maybe public television, Facebook Live. We're just gonna explore a lot of different avenues.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, as much as we can. I know the only things I'm talking like personally, with my job at UVA has been meeting like outside, fairly distanced apart with masks on, but that only works well with like 1 or 2 people to hear each other. And but I was thinking maybe for the residents who need the in-person, I don't know, if you need to get a tent or something, be more available.
Yeah. I've got access to pop-up tents. We're willing to explore lots of things. We just want to keep everyone safe. So we're just trying to really put a lot of thought into it. And we welcome, ideas for that.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so in terms of the agenda, we're up to our next period of public comments. And then we had added a closed session that it's not really annual meeting preparation, but annual meeting. Usually in July, the board meets to appoint officers. So I believe in the past, I'm trying to remember, there's just been a chair, a vice chair, and a treasurer. So there's 3 like titled positions. So that's just for us to iron out because we haven't done it yet this year. And then that's all we have for tonight. So public comment, please. And I'm just muting because people are walking through this.
Sure, and if any of our attendees would like to speak during this public comment, please click the raise hand icon or press *9 on the phone. And we do have one hand raised, Ms. Joy Johnson.
Hello, hi. 2 things, a couple of things quickly. I questioned it the last time that you all went in closed session to talk about, your new board or your new officers. That was something new. I didn't know that you all could do that. They used to do it in public, but now they're not doing that. And so just wanted to ask the same question this year. That was 1. Number 2, I think Ms. Green, Lisa Green, being that she has been on the planning commission, that she could be a good help to the residents now, the women at South First Street who are doing the planning, and the maybe new residents who may join also, because there's some technical stuff that gets crammed with residents, and I believe that she could be a real good help to helping people to understand design and all the other stuff. And there's some other people that will be good, but being that she's on the board, I would think that she could be very helpful to residents-led design and planning. On the safety committee, Ms. Walker, before you came on, what I was saying was I had a tough day today because I was in a couple of communities and people, were just kind of laying me out about, not hearing what residents are saying and, as being a leader, you're not doing anything or whatever. So I just had a rough day and my heart was heavy, still is heavy, because I feel like people are crying out for some help and they feel like they're being left out. I also want to say that, the more I talk to Mayor Walker and some other people like Don and even one day, sometimes they say things that just click with me a little bit more and make me tweak some of the way I'm thinking about things. So I just want to say the way I see this, is that there's 3 parts to this safety thing. It's CRHA, it's the residents, and it's the community. And I'm and the city, because we are in the city. And so I just want to put that out there that I am thinking proactively, but I'm also getting my ass beat in the community because people feel like, they feel, and I respect how they feel because I have to. This is how it's impacting them and this is how they're feeling. And they're basically saying, y'all are not listening. Y'all are not doing anything. What are y'all going to do? Wait until somebody get killed. So that was just part of my frustration, and maybe I shouldn't have said a lot, but I had a tough day today. I really have had a tough day today and being that I am, and being that I am the chair of FAR, it comes with the territory. I have to take it, but I also have to let you all know how I'm feeling. And the other part of it is that my heart is even heavier because of what's going on in the community. You know what I'm saying? And it reflects. It impacts us. It really impacts us because I think a lot of people in their conversation with me were basically saying, and here's what's going on in the city. So we know they don't care about public housing residents. So I just wanted to share that. Thank everybody who have listened. And if I am messing up, I am always open to constructive criticism. But anyway, that's all. Thank y'all.
And Joy, we have these conversations probably, I don't know, often. And I really do understand. And there is not any part of me, when I was given the feedback that there were families who thought I was okay, that translation from police in Park Street, like you police First Street or whatever, translated into I didn't care if their babies got shot. That was it was just hard to deal with.
I get it.
Asked Chief Brackney, are officers attempting to sabotage this so that the change in how policing is done won't happen because of feedback from community about officers telling them to talk to their mayor because I'm the one who don't want them in the community. And then having the community where there are some people demanding increased police presence in the community, some of those same people and then other people in the community are in this defund, abolish conversations. And anytime there's a number that goes up and the person is Black or Hispanic, we are criticized for tossing people, into a system that's only created to destroy them. This has just been a really challenging time to try to figure out, even with all of that, with me trying to stay consistent to values of how do we do this in a healthy way that doesn't contribute to the systems that have been in place to destroy people, and how do we create community so that there are people who are saying this stuff is not allowed here, right? And that those voices are loud enough to push out if there are people in the community to cause harm and confusion. And those are the conversations that I, have been trying to get us to create. I've heard feedback, negative feedback about me from our staff at City Hall. I've heard it from CRHA staff. I'm telling you, I can't win in this community. And the only thing that I'm asking is if we are talking about systemic changes, that we just can't go back to the responses that we know haven't worked. While they will handle some of these things temporarily, they won't work. I know that Mr. Sells, that we had a conversation early on, and I went back to see if I missed the email, but it is on my radar now to set this, meeting up again. I know we had a conversation early August, I think, about Chief Brackney, but I haven't been on all the email chains, and I went back and looked and asked you, and I'll try to resolve that. You asked about like John Blair and trying to find space and vehicles and stuff like that, and you and John had a conversation, I think, the next day. So if there hasn't been something that occurred, I've already sent Chief Brackney a message about this. We can start having conversations. I think that we have to figure out how we're going to have this conversation where we're just not demanding what we have had in the past. And also, I hope that we are also working to, even though that larger change is hard, that we also work, on that, on that too. Kids have a right to grow up in communities where there are not people, outside of their doors wreaking havoc. But I also believe that they have a right to grow up in communities where the police are not sitting right outside their door when they walk out of it. And I just hope that we can work on both of those.
Yeah, again, that's why I'm rethinking it, because I know that there are, so I'm gonna make it real fast because we can talk about this another time. But this is why I feel like this is three parts to it, right? It's the responsibility of CRHA and the contract that we have signed with them. It's part of their mission to provide safe and decent housing, and I feel like policies. This is just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. I don't feel like I'm wrong though, because I have talked to my residents to say, you have a lease. Have you read your lease? Do you understand what your obligations are? And even if they understand it, I don't believe they think it applies to them. And I think that's kind of where I'm sitting right now, is that in this, what's going on in the world, there are certain people that just feel like policies and procedure does not applies to them. But again, I go back, I'm not trying to pass judgment on anybody, because I used to be a part of the problem, but I changed. Is that this has to be a three-part thing. And so I'm looking forward. I haven't given up yet, but thank you all for listening.
Okay, and we have one other attendee with their hand up, Ms. Audrey Oliver. Ms. Oliver, you are up to speak and you can unmute.
Hi, everyone. I'm Audrey Oliver. Wanted to talk about, some of the stuff that's going on also in public housing. I see when you have folks who are marching through the street saying that Black Lives Matter. I'm just wondering if that's a part of public housing residents as well. Do our lives matter? And, I just think that it's obvious that we're not going to get any help from the city. We've been through this over and over again with the police department and all. I don't think that it's the police that don't want to do their job, because they let us know when they come into the community and they have the conversation. They let us know. It's not us that don't want to do our job. We're just not allowed to do our job, but they're allowed to get big paychecks to do a job that they're just not allowed to do. And if you talk about police who don't show up, we had a gas leak over here today on South 1st Street, and the police were called so that we wanted them to block off the drives to keep cars from coming through the drive, and they never showed up. And then when they showed up, they were told, the person who called said they were told that they were en route, but I never saw them show up until after everything was pretty much over with and the fire department had already left. Then they started riding through the community. For me, I would like to see the Housing Authority, FAR, the Housing Authority staff and the Safety Committee meet together, figure out how we take our communities, because we're gonna have to do this ourselves. Even if it talks about, Joy, like you said, a march on poor people, because that's what we're gonna have to get any attention. And the other piece of it is that I think that we are at the point where we need to meet with all the city councils, and that they can hear outside of what's going on outside to see if they're willing to help. And if they're not willing to help, then we need to figure out how we fix this ourselves, because that's the only way it's going to get fixed.
And so that's the kind of rhetoric that I'm talking about that I've been hearing from the community, that the translation of what I've asked for healthy police in the community has turned into I am controlling whether police can come into the community and do their jobs. And it's not healthy. One, Ms. Oliver, you've never had a conversation with me about anything that I've said to our police department. So you don't know if they're giving you accurate information or not, but you've taken their story to be true, which is unfortunate that that is the type of stuff that we do to one another.
I never said you. I wasn't particularly talking about.
If you said that you want to talk to the rest of city council, some of your.
Oh yeah, we do. We need. They need to hear our side of the story. We don't need a messenger. They need to hear us. We need to talk to them. They need to hear us, not a messenger.
All right.
But I was not referring to you specifically when I said about the police, because you know they have a boss, and you know that's where their directors come to it. And if you're a part of that, then yeah, you'll be a part of that. If you're a part of their directors, then yeah, I'm talking about you too.
I'm aware. Thank you.
Never mind, I'm muted. Thank you, Miss Oliver. All right, anyone else want to speak this evening? Okay, thank you. I think, so now we can go into closed session, and I need to, oh, hold on. I mean, and I'm speaking back to Ms. Johnson's comment, I'm happy to do this in public. I think I was just going on what had happened when I was in the room. So we don't need to do closed session. How did the other commissioners feel about this?
If I can just interject,
yeah,
Madam Chair, I don't believe that there's an exception to the open meetings requirement for designation of officers.
What do you mean? So we have to do closed session?
No, I think you can't do closed session on that issue.
Oh, well, this is very good to know. All right, well then let's roll. It might, I mean, I don't know, people may not be in the headspace to do this at the moment, but.
So should we wait for Lisa to be here to do this?
Yeah, we could. I mean, we're operating as we are, so.
Or Commissioner Green.
Yeah. We could also do it at the work session if she can make that. Mr. Sales, does that, well, or Mr. Oberg, can we do something like that at a work session, or do we need to make this part of our next meeting?
That can be part of a work session.
Okay. So either the work session or the next meeting, we could do that. And I would say in the meantime, just think about if you would like one of those roles. In the past, Miss Oliver and I had discussed being a co-chair. You know, these are titles that come from HUD, but they haven't, vice chair has been someone who stepped up and run the meetings, but the treasurer hasn't necessarily been doing that much with finance, you know, so I think we can maybe adjust whether they're just titles, which is kind of what they've been, except that I have been running the meetings, or if we want to attach, you know, a little bit more work to the roles. But honestly, in the past, they've been titles. So think about if you're interested in those. And I think if whoever would like to be the treasurer, actually, we should probably have part of the finance committee in running or helping to run the finance committee. Because I think in the past we haven't actually, you know, done much with that treasurer role. Okay, so we'll postpone that to the next session, and it does not need to be a closed session. We can just do it during our committee appointments or our commissioner updates at the beginning of the meeting. So at this point, I think we can motion for adjournment.
Can I get one thing?
Yes, Mr. Sales, please.
So we have posted for the finance director. I think we talked about the first meeting. We have found 3 good candidates. And at the closed session, I was going to go a little bit further in that, but I can ask now, are there any commissioners that would like to be part of that hiring panel, interview panel? Dr. Henry, would you like to be part of it as well, since you are in the finance committee?
Certainly.
Okay, I think we're shooting for next Wednesday, but if that day does not work for you two, we can reschedule.
Just shoot me an email to remind me.
Okay, we'll do.
Do you have a time?
I think we have 1 to 4 between that time frame.
Okay.
They shouldn't be any longer than about an hour.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Henry and Mayor Walker. And maybe we'll brainstorm again. We can't discuss this on email, but send me a note if you have ideas for a work session. But maybe one of the things, Mr. Sales, I think last month you had talked about, there were various positions. One was maybe a redevelopment construction manager position, or some tech position, maybe an update on staffing and kind of how that's going. Because at that point, maybe there'll be a decision on the finance director.
And just a quick, Betsy, did you all get the email that I sent about what constitutes a meeting according to the last court case that was decided on that? Which isn't that you can't have meetings. It's more of that if there, is these back-to-back responses on meeting. And so I sent the case that, has, determined that, and it's just something to think about, because I don't know how you would get anything done if you can never send an email. And so we've had several FOIA trainings, and I just think it's something that we may want to explore more to get a better understanding of what's actually possible.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess the other piece of it is, honestly, sometimes often what we need to discuss isn't necessarily anything that I don't want people to know. It's more of a means of communication with people in various places doing jobs at various times, so.
Here's something that I'm not clear on. It's okay if you meet and it becomes like that as long as you publicize it, right?
Right, if you're gonna meet, you have to do a public.
If you meet, as long as you're not hiding it from the public, you can meet. But when you start
so long as there can be participation by the media and the public, yes, you can meet.
Yeah, and so it's something that you could bring to their attention, that we had a meeting and we came up with this.
Now, you have to provide them with notice prior to the meeting.
Oh. And so in other words, before I decide to send an email, I just have to let everybody in the public know that I'm going to have this other people. I plan on emailing these people at such and such a time.
It is perfectly appropriate under the law to send an email to your commissioners. What's not appropriate is when I send an email to Kathleen and to a group, and Kathleen responds to the group, and Claudette immediately responds to the group, and then Barbara immediately responds to the group, to the point that it becomes an open conversation.
Oh.
So it's just if there's a time between the meeting, between the responses, and usually that works out because everyone has a different schedule. And I think I gave the example on council. There are 2 counselors who usually are responding to things at night, Then there are 2 counselors. I'm one of those people who will probably respond to everything immediately, no matter what time it is. And so I have to be careful when, you know, like Heather, Counselor Hill responds. And then there's a counselor who is going to get to it, but, you know, so usually there's 2 of us who have to worry about that response time. And then the other 3, it's probably not going to be any close, you know, time close together. And we've had that situation that's been described where Mr. Blair is like, nobody responds, right? And so nobody else responds to this. So you definitely want to be very mindful. It's easy. And I think that's probably why we were giving the feedback we got the last time. Is easy too if you're not thinking about it, but as long as it's not a, you know, back and forth discussion where it's like 12:01, you responded, 12:05, you respond, someone else responded, 12:07, someone else responded, you know, those type of situations, it should work out for us to be able to communicate through email. Everyone just has to be mindful of what the rules is and to not be, you know, having the open conversation that would be like us sitting here in a meeting where you just said something and I said something and Betsy said something, then that's, you know, what they are trying to prevent.
My experience has been that those conversations usually occur about something that has absolutely no importance at all. Like, what do we want to have for lunch? Or something that is really, really important and people are upset and they feel the need to immediately respond. And that's where you kind of get in trouble. My suggestion is that a way around that is for the person sending the email to, instead of carbon copying people, blind carbon copy them. And that prevents everyone from replying all. That really is, you know, a very safe way to make sure that you don't get into that situation.
I never thought, okay. I mean, in our case, I think it's usually nothing to, you know, it's mostly communication. You know, we have a lot of information and a lot goes on, you know, Mr. Sales and Miss Glenn, you know, everyone, there's a lot that goes on every day in terms of public housing. And as the board, we're supposed to try to not get into the nitty gritty, but we do need to communicate and make sure we're all getting the information that we need.
And most of the time we're just reading that information and the conversation is going on with staff, right? And so that's, you know, different too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm trying to think where, so anything else before we adjourn? And please, you know, you don't have to reply all, but think about what we would like to spend some time on a work session where we don't have to have a formal meeting and we can kind of stick with a topic for a little bit longer. The one idea I had was, you know, sort of redevelopment, short and long term for the new commissioners who haven't been, you know, following along as a commissioner for so long. And then also maybe Mr. Sales kind of updating us on staffing changes and how things look in terms of kind of personnel that we've been needing for a while.
I also, at the last training, the lawyers had some ideas about, I thought that they'd mentioned a finance training. I think that would be, I mean, I'm, you know, what even for people not on the finance committee and perhaps them too, that I think would be very useful.
Great. We can ask that, maybe we can schedule that for like the November, I mean, we could try for October, but if they need more time, we could do that within the next couple of months. I think that's a great idea, especially before budget season starts. Okay, great. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and I'll do the roll call. All those in favor, or I guess vote to adjourn. Dr. Henry?
Aye.
Mayor Walker?
Yes.
Osteen says yes by text. Ms. Goldblatt?
Yes.
And myself. Okay. Thank you all very much for all your hard work, and also to the public people who give public comment. Thank you very much. We really need your input as well. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.